Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media and, of course, the listening and viewing public. Welcome to yet another post-cabinet media conference here at the Office of the Prime Minister, today being December 1st, 2016. Today we would have the Prime Minister himself addressing you, the media, and we will later be joined by Minister Stuart Young, who would be available to answer questions posed that he may be able to answer. So I would now pass the mic to the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, members of the media, members of the listening and viewing public. Today I want to congratulate members of the national community for once again taking part in a very important national exercise. We had our local elections, and notwithstanding one or two instances of concern, by and large we've conducted our election very smoothly, and the results ought to be official in a matter of few hours or a day by tomorrow. So we await the final adjudication of the Election and Boundaries Commission, which in our view, at the government and at the political party level, we are of the view that the elections were very well conducted, and we as a country should be very pleased about that. I simply want to inform the national population that now that the scheduled local elections are out of the way, that we now turn our attention more focused on some other matters which have been attracting our attention for the earlier part of the year. You may have been informed or know from other sources that Trinidad and Tobago has been engaged in some very, very far-reaching, important discussions with our neighbor Venezuela with respect to our commercial association with respect to resources that now are in Venezuelan territory, for which Trinidad and Tobago can provide an outlet. The Ministry of Energy, National Gas Company, PDVSA, the Venezuelan Oil Company, and the government of Venezuela, for the last year, I would say, we have worked consistently towards arriving at a situation where commercial users of natural gas, which is of concern in Trinidad and Tobago, can find supplies from Venezuelan fields which are close to our users. These discussions have progressed very smoothly and with a lot of very good cooperation from the government of Venezuela. At the government level, the government of Venezuela and the government of Trinidad and Tobago, represented by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here and the Ministry of Energy, and the government of Venezuela represented by their Foreign and Energy Ministry and their ambassador here in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as the National Gas Company. We've had a lot of exchanges, both in Port of Spain and Caracas, and along with Shell, who is partnering with Trinidad and Tobago in this exercise, Shell being the owner of pipeline and platform in Trinidad and Tobago, which can be considered for utilization in the entry of the receipt of any gas from Venezuela. So between these various parties and sitting down and discussing what is possible as a major commercial exercise, we are now at the stage where we are in a position to sign the government agreement and the commercial structure, which will open the door for commercial exploitation of the Dragon gas field in Venezuela, which is to the north of us here, just beyond the Bocas. And that gas field would become the first major field that would supply gas from Venezuelan fields into Trinidad pipelines towards Point Lisas to supply our facilities there. And we have done this in the context of looking after the future of Trinidad and Tobago in the medium and the long term. The arrangements, the details of the arrangements would be made public later after the signing. But the whole expectation, the whole intention is that our operations here in Trinidad and Tobago can have a much longer future. And the gas shortage, which has been plaguing us for the last few years, in the not too distant future, would be dealt with by a sustained and sufficient supply coming from the Venezuelan fields, which will be processed here in Trinidad and Tobago and supply us with an export product into our current market and other markets. So this is very good news for us in Trinidad and Tobago, and the discussions that have been going on for months will come to a head in Caracas when I travel there on Monday with a team from Trinidad and Tobago. It's a fairly large team, headed by myself and those who are involved at the Prime Minister's office end, and the Ministry of Energy, their team, National Gas, and of course we've invited the media. The main media have been invited, so we expect that some media personnel will travel with us. We are traveling by way of a charter of one of our ATR planes that will take the delegation to Caracas. We go in the morning, conduct this business, and we come back in the afternoon on Monday. When we get back from Venezuela, we will go into a bit more depth as to what the details are, as to what the numbers are with respect to what we have signed on to in expectation. And we meet Shell. Shell will join us in Venezuela. So between all these various parties, Monday is a very significant day for us here. And then, as you know, the Tobago House of Assembly has been dissolved on the advice of the Chief Secretary to the President. That was done in October. That dissolution now requires by law that an election be held within 90 days. The 90th day sometime in, I think, the first week in February. The Chief Secretary would have advised the President as required by law as to what date he would like the election held. But it is the President who will make that call after the relevant consultations, and more importantly, that the EBC's report, which has been available, the EBC has submitted its report on the boundaries of the 12 electoral districts in Tobago. That report has to go to the Parliament and be approved by the Lower House. That report has been laid in the Parliament, and the Leader of Government Business has advised that the Parliament would meet next week, Wednesday, to treat with this matter. And once that matter has been successfully prosecuted in the Parliament and approved, then the President would be in a position to call the election date for the THA. And so we move from the local election in Trinidad to the THA election in Tobago after these legal requirements have been met and satisfied. So we meet in Parliament on Friday. Friday we are allowing the opposition to have a private members' day on Friday, which is tomorrow, because having not had the Parliament last Friday because of the election weekend, we have agreed to allow this Friday to be used as opposition private members' day. So those are the developments in front of you, and if you have any questions on the matters I have mentioned and any other, I'll be pleased to take them now.
Yes, Prime Minister, perhaps on another issue which is engaging spotlight right now, could you give us any idea as to whether you've been briefed about the situation in northeast Trinidad, Matlock area, and any further decisions to bring relief to the affected people up there?
Yes, I've been in touch all along the way. I've been abreast of what's happening there. I spoke to the Minister of Works, who unfortunately is at a funeral of his uncle at this moment. But we are aware of the hardships being experienced by that area, and also that Tobago has suffered some damage as well. But the THA is in charge of what's happening in Tobago. But with respect to Matlot, you know that there's one road into Matlot along the coast, and there are about 11 locations on the road where landslides have come down. Equipment is on site. The Defence Forces up there rendering some kind of assistance. There's an access problem which by now I hope would have been cleared sufficiently. Some bridges have been damaged significantly, and our immediate response is to bring relief to those persons who are trapped inside of Matlot as we are making our way from Toko, clearing the landslides in towards Matlot. And when that is done, when the access is reopened, we will make an immediate assessment. I've already cleared with the Minister of Works that we will make special efforts to ensure that we do some reconstructing so that the people of Matlot in very short order will have the access back and that their immediate personal and household needs are met. So we are on top of that, and hopefully by the end of the day, all the immediate relief from the various agencies would have been brought to them and the situation would be under control. And the Minister of Finance will make whatever short-term interventions are required to respond to this development, which fortunately is only confined to one small area in the country.
Prime Minister, Mr. Rowley spoke this morning about the need for a relief center to be based in Togo, because often when these things happen and relief needs to go to that part of the country, they're coming from further away, which delays the time period in which they can reach the people who are affected. In considering, upgrading the road network to Togo and so on, as Governor has talked about, is that something you think should be undertaken?
Well, we'll have to consider what can be done to make our responses more timely. There is a question of what kind of equipment can be in the Toko area, because it's an equipment thing, and holding in store some supplies in Toko, that's a good idea that could be operationalized. So when we do the post-mortem on what's happening now, those ideas will form part of that conversation.
I want to track back to Monday evening at Bali's house. You got some flack within the media for strips when you were asked by a reporter about the load turnover, and if that in any way undermined the substance of the mandate that Reuters gave the PMM in seven operations. In retrospect, do you regret that strips?
Listen, I'm amazed at what becomes, an exercise for the media. And I'm not sure that the media knew what I was referring to. But of course, I can't tell the media, how to caricature me or how to accept me. The bottom line is, if you are going to go into the details of any reaction of mine, it was not about what that. My reaction was to the misinformation that was being peddled, right? And it was aggravating to me, and it is still a matter of concern to me that the media could be so manipulated to accept misinformation and then to exercise the misinformation as questions to me. If you remember, if you were there, you'd realize I was being asked about the rejection of the party which I lead. And my response is simply that we were not rejected. An election is a process by which you determine something, and that determination is done by the persons who come out to vote, and then you count the votes. And basically, that is the exercise that we were engaged in. And all I was saying, this is today's exercise, tonight's exercise, is counting the votes as cast to determine who would have won the right to be in the executive. That's his exercise. And insofar as the questions are about shifting from that to who didn't come out, and more than that, who is rejected by those who didn't come out, I find that quite, that wasn't the point at which I wanted to discuss that. And that's all I did say.
With that being said, though, the numbers, I'm not sure if there's been an official figure, but the guesstimates have put it in the 20-something percent.
And again, that is not correct. That I'm amazed. I sat there and watched the broadcast on Monday night. And if you notice, the PNM came before the media about 10:15, I think it was 10 o'clock, because we waited until we had proper information, so that when we come before the media, we are going to be dealing with proper, correct information. I sat there and watched a whole night discourse on a turnout of 17%, and it was the lowest ever. And what does it mean for the political party? And what does it mean for the leader? And it was entirely incorrect. And it is now how many days after, and you're still talking about 20-odd%. Our information on the data available to us is that the turnout was relatively normal for a local government election. It was a 34% turnout. But on Monday night, all the way in the media accepted misinformation from other sources and conducted the night's discussion on misinformation of a 17% turnout. And this happened in the last election in 2013 because people who want to create a certain kind of response from the population and from the media feed misinformation to the media swallows it unchallenged, and then turn around to question the PNM on the basis of misinformation. The people are saying that, oh, it is the 88% that did not come out to vote that we should be concerned about. That is not correct. As a matter of fact, since you've raised it, the information that we have, we who took part in the election and fielded 137 candidates, our information is that in many areas, the turnout was as high as 40-odd%. Most areas it was in the 30-odd%. The average was 34%. The lowest was 22% and 23% in Port of Spain and Diego Martin, where, incidentally, the PNM won all 22 seats by upwards of 70 or 80%. Now, that being the case, it was a little bit, aggravating to see the entire media corps accepting wrong information and then exercising itself on it. And that was deliberated. Those who spent the night feeding wrong information to the media, it was a strategy to deal with an incoming defeat. Because, it is ridiculous. There were 137 seats up for grabs. That was the exercise. Parties come out and contested. We contested all 137. Some persons choose to contest some in large numbers or small numbers. 137 seats. We went in with 85 seats. We came out with 82. No, 83, 82 seats. We won 82 of the 137 seats. But somehow, the people who won 54 seats, 55 seats, somehow managed to be getting the media to say that they won the election. And the whole conversation now is about two parties and both of them win and both of them lost and so on and so on. I find that to be a conversation that is a little bit convoluted. And of course, I saw the leader of the opposition saying to you in the media that they wrestled 12 seats from the PNM. I can't tell you how to do your job, but if I was in the media, I would like to know which are these 12 seats. Where did the UNC win 12 seats from the PNM? We came out one seat different to what we went in with. And of course, there was a new seat created. We won that new seat. We won a seat in San Fernando that we had not won for 24 years. We got, as a result of that, all the corporations. There are 7 corporations in which the PNM alone won seats. 7. We have seats in every corporation bar one, Pinal DB. We polled more votes in some areas than we did in 2013. In some instances, we polled more votes in those areas, but we didn't, in fact, win the seat. We lost by very narrow margins. So, in short, we are quite pleased with the PNM's performance in a local government election where we have been managing the country in a less than rosy environment. Difficulty from September last year until now, it has been a difficult situation. Many people are not pleased with their personal circumstances because the country's circumstances have impacted them negatively. And against that background, we come out of it with 82 seats out of 137, and our vote declined by 8% as compared to 2013, which was an election that was held on the verge of a general and people were more anxious to vote. And those who are claiming to have won, their vote dropped by 30%. I have not heard that being said as part of the conversation. But of course, I heard the opposition leader saying to you, the media, that the PNM should be ashamed because we lost 70,000 votes. We are not the party that lost 70,000 votes. That is the opposition.
Prime Minister, do you see a role here for more timely information from the EBC? Because we're how many days out, we still don't have everything to
I
the EBC needs to hasten its processes and get it verified.
Okay. The EBC is run by a piece of legislation which it has to be very careful with. The first thing you have to do on the night of the election is to determine the source of the information and how complete that information is. What has happened on Monday night is that people who did not want to face another defeat organized themselves to feed misinformation to those who were informing the public. And I must admit, they did a brilliant job. They did a brilliant job into feeding misinformation to those who were informing the public. And that was all to dampen the effect of another obvious defeat that was coming. Because if you look at it, in 2013, the results were a defeat for the UNC. It is very much the same in 2016, but somehow it is not to be viewed as a defeat. This time it's a victory. And I must say, I don't want to criticize the media or get involved in how you do your business, but you allowed the opposition leader to say, we won Chaguanas, which we didn't have last time. You, the media, I said on a platform, the PNM was invited to be chair of Chaguanas in 2013 because the PNM and the ILP together, we could have controlled Chaguanas with a PNM chairmanship. But we did not want a coalition of that nature, and therefore the UNC with the minority ran Chaguanas for 3 years. So, and the votes that they picked up in Chaguanas, the seats they picked up in Chaguanas, the ILP had 100,000 votes in a three-way fight. This time the ILP was not a factor. They recovered in their stronghold the 2 ILP seats, and that is what it was. That is the conversation, but not misinformation that you did, and you watching this misinformation. When I came before the media on Monday night, I came with clear view as to what has happened, which is why I was able to say that I think it was a fantastic victory for the PNM, that we held our position after a year of difficulty in the country, and I maintain that position.
Prime Minister, what I'm asking about those in vacuum that allows for, as you're saying, misinformation to thrive when the timely, accurate information is not forthcoming yet.
Well, I don't know what is holding the EBC up. There are recounts. There were some recounts taking place. The EBC has to go, ensure that the recounts are done before they publish the results and so on. I don't know what's holding them up, but I mean, we all would like the results as quickly as possible, and that is something you may want to raise with the EBC. But I'm not going to take issue with that.
Prime Minister, continuing on the local government theme, the opposition leaders claimed that the PNM, and specifically its chairman, was too premature in saying that the Sangre-Grande Corporation will go back to the PNM.
We don't need the permission of the opposition leader to speak. They could say what they want. They could organize their business. It's still a free country. That press conference was a press conference held by the PNM. The PNM's chairman, who happened to have been our campaign manager for the local election, once the results were clear enough to us, and then we sought proper legal advice, we got it, and as soon as we got it, we made that advice available to the public, and we don't need the permission of the opposition leader or the opposition party to speak to the public. It is for them to react, and their reaction was what was expected, nothing new. The fact of the matter is that under law, we retain the chairmanship and control of the Sangre-Grande Corporation, not by any favor or by any coalition. The law provides for us to remain there, and we sought legal advice before we spoke, and that's how the PNM conducts its business.
Mr. Prime Minister, good afternoon. That $15 million amount that was mentioned by Minister of Finance and the Economy, Colin Imbert, in the budget with respect to trade unions, it came up recently in a matter involving Dr. Rudal Munilal and Ansel Roger. Could we get an update on what has happened?
I'm afraid you have to put that to the Minister of Finance. I don't have that information in front of me now.
Okay. Well, buoyed by OPEC's decision to effect production cuts for the first time in 2 years, this is recent as yesterday, how does government react to that situation?
Any development that gives us the opportunity to strengthen our revenue stream would be welcome at this time.
Right. You are off to Venezuela, I gather, in a couple of days' time to sign that gas
On Monday, yes.
on Monday. What are we likely to get the population to understand from this?
Well, that's what happens when you come late, right?
I'm sorry.
I know.
Forgive me.
I guess we are all apologizing today. I'm apologizing to my friends, my friend Sean Douglas, who was being a little. I'm sure. Anyway, the question was what we're to expect from our visit to Venezuela. Well, we are to expect a very far-reaching development where Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago will sign an agreement which will open the door for Venezuelan gas to make its way to Trinidad gas-using plants. And what that would do is to provide a medium and long-term supply for plants which are now struggling to meet their maximum performance because of a chronic gas shortage here in Trinidad and Tobago. And it's a very significant development from the standpoint of our revenues and our maintenance of our industry in Trinidad and Tobago. And it also provides an outlet for Venezuela to monetize gas which has been lying in the northern fields of Venezuela.
All right, moving on. That $1 billion citation that was mentioned, that we get from England or something like that?
The what?
So the OS, $1 billion citation, yeah, that was mentioned.
Yes, these are bonds which, when the OAS was hired as a contractor, we would pay money to them, and they were to do work for us. And as an insurance to secure that the monies that they were receiving and the work that they had to do for us with the money they were receiving were being done, at the beginning of the contract, they had to put up cash as a bond. And the bonding was the effect of a certain amount of hundreds of millions of US dollars, equivalent to approximately $1 billion TT dollars. And those bonds were letters of credit, which were, as long as you presented them to the bank had to pay, no questions asked. And those bonds are callable if terms of the contracts were not met. And because we had the reason to fire the contractor, under the terms of the contract, those bonds were callable, and we did call them, and the contractor tried to resist. We went to court, and the banks were forced by the courts to pay. And that's how we recovered approximately $1 billion. These were the bonds that were securing the contract for monies that we had been paying to the contractor.
And last but not least, as head of the National Security Council, do you see the need for more teeth in your authority, or as head of this particular unit?
More teeth?
Yeah.
Are you aware how many teeth we have?
Power, to be able to do something.
No, the chairman of the National Security Council, the National Security Council has what I would think adequate authority over matters of national security. It is comprised of the Prime Minister as head of the cabinet as chairman, the National Security Minister, who is minister with portfolio responsibility for the defense force and the police, and of course other aspects of national security. And when you put those together, I don't know that there is any absence of authority in that package of persons who make up the National Security Council.
I want to get back to the local government election. In analyzing the performance of both parties, one of the things that the media as well as the analysts have done is to look at where the parties, how they performed in the last local government election, and to make the comparisons on the basis of the performance in the last election. So for example, the PNN lost some seats, the LCD some seats. There was a voter turnout of 43.6% in the last local government election. You have said today that the voter turnout is somewhere in the region of 4%. So I'm asking the question in the context not of what not of looking at the results in a vacuum as these are the results, we got more than they did, but from the point of view that you were at a certain level previously and you have moved to another level, or at least there seems to have been a slide. How do you respond to an analysis of that, of the data from that perspective, as opposed to just sort of jumping into 2016 and saying, this is what we did vis-a-vis what they did today?
No, well, again, you're talking to me and talking to as leader of the PNM, right? The first thing you have to have is the data. If you're going to analyze the data and draw conclusions, you have to have the data. My criticism was that the analysis was being done either without the data or with incorrect data. Okay, that's the first thing. Secondly, you're quite correct. If you are to analyze this election, it can't be done in a vacuum. You look at it as compared to the last election. I did say to you that the votes of the PNM in this election, as compared to the last election, show an 8% overall fall in support for the party. And if I am to refer to the other party or main contender, there was a 30% decline in support for them, 2013 against 2016. Right. Having recognized that there has been a decline in the vote all around for both sides, there was a lower participation. The question is, where did that occur? I'm saying to you, in some areas, we polled more votes in 2016 than in 2013, and in other areas, we polled less. And the two areas that we polled less, in Port of Spain and Diego Martin, even though we won the seats handsomely as compared to how the contest went, the voter turnout in those two areas were lower. One was 22%, one was 23%, I think it was. And in most areas, the turnout was in the mid to low 30s. So there was a lower voter turnout. But even in the face of that, there were areas where the turnout and the result was better for us than in 2013, right? And I made the point, we looked at it, we held a seat, there were two seats in particular, which were one we didn't have at all, which was the La Romaine seat, which we won. We didn't win that in 2013. We had a seat that we had won by 7 votes in 2013 in a 3-way fight where the ILP polled 1,000 votes. We had won that seat, but we recognized that seat, in fact, there were about 10 or 12 seats like that, where of the 84 seats we had in 2013, the presence of the ILP, making it a 3-way fight, allowed us to win a few seats by a plurality. Sawan East was won by 7 votes in 2013. That's a seat which on this occasion, even though we polled more votes in Sawan East than we did in 2013 when we won it, on this occasion we lost it, right? Because a lot of the ILP supporters went back to the UNC. These are realities that we face. There were a couple of other seats like that, one in Princestown and one somewhere else, where in a 3-way fight, we did get a couple of those seats in 2013. But there were seats that we lost by 1,000 votes in 2013, that on this occasion, we lost by 200 votes. In Rio Claro South, Cats Hill, we lost that by less than 100. Which was about the same thing that happened in 2013 where we lost by 84 votes. We lost another seat, Ruzilac. We lost Ruzilac by less than 100 votes. Last time in 2013, we lost it by many hundreds of votes. So there are areas where we felt that we did better, right, than in 2016 than 20. So until you have the data, a lot of the analysis is pontification without data. And that's what I'm saying. When you are talking about the things, the least you can do is to have the data or have some perspective that is based in the data. And it was put out on Tuesday, Monday night into Tuesday, that this was the lowest turnout ever in a local government election. That is not true. It's just plain not true. It's an average turnout. Local government in the 30s is the average for a local government election. On unusual situations, it goes up. 2013 was unusual. We had a very unpopular government. We had a very exercised PNM anticipating a general election. We had a good turnout, which was 41%, which was the second highest ever. There was some time before where local government came in in the 20s for a reason to be explained. So when at 34%, we just wouldn't accept that it was 17% and it was the worst ever. And on that basis of wrong information, people are now pontificating about the electorate this and the electorate that. And all I'm saying, let us base our decisions on the facts. And we as a political party, we have a clear idea as to what would have happened, where it happened, and of course we'll do our analysis and we go forward from there. Well, those who wanted to come out came out. And if you talk to people, a lot of people will tell you straight up front that they're not interested in local government elections. And there are many who are skeptical that they're not interested in local government because nothing will change. I mean, you will just have to keep holding out to these people another point of view. But I don't know why, if you go out, the option is there for persons to come out or not come out. Many persons in Trinidad, I should say, view local government as a secondary election in which they're not really interested. Let's start with that. And if I had not gone out there and the party had not done as hard as we did in trying to talk about local government reform and holding out the prospect of local government reform, we might have got a 15% turnout, I don't know. But at least when you're talking about who won or the response from the electorate and you're counting, you can only count who came out. That is not to say you're disregarding those who didn't come, because you have to serve everybody. At the end of the day, we are all going to be impacted by local government. But in terms of who participate in the election, I mean, you have people who offered, the PLM wasn't the only party in the election, you know. There were about 5 or 6 other parties. There was a party that polled 100,000 votes in the last election. That put up 7 candidates in this election. There was a party that was in the parliament with 8 parliamentary seats. They got less than 1,000 votes in this election, or 1,200 votes in this election. I am not hearing any discussion about their future. The PNM is held to a higher standard. That I accept. And we always strive for a higher standard. But in a 34% turnout in this situation, and given what the outcome says in terms of who was won seats, I think we won't fly in God's face over that. We move on.
Well, I mean, just to respond to what you just said, whoever is in government is generally under more scrutiny, so that it is the performance of the government, the PNF as government in the local government election, that brings all the attention. What
and all I'm saying, I am not here trying to tell you what to do in terms of your scrutiny, your analysis, and so on. All I'm saying, let it be done on the data. What happened on Monday night? What happened on Monday night was an embarrassment. I saw people who were analysts on national television, not a scrap of paper in front of them, not a line of data, pontificating on data which was plainly wrong, and then attempting to hold the PNM to the analysis based on wrong data.
able to look at the data?
Well, again, I run a political party. We are a political party. We take responsibility for what we do, and it's not for us to tell the media how to run your business. Except that if you're going to comment about us and put to us, isn't it reasonable to ask that you put to us correct information? There was never any 17% turnout. It was never the lowest ever. There was never a situation of we lose 12 seats to the UNC. All of this was misinformation. Fed straight into the media, accepted without query, without question.
When you address the media, the PNM's figures were 83,
54. Since then, and that's why I'm saying to I'm saying to your colleague, no.
Wrong information. What I'm saying is that everybody sort of got something wrong. So
No, I am not accepting that. The entire coverage on Monday night was based on misinformation being fed to the media. Right? The entire coverage. As a matter of fact, I may raise this. If a foreigner had come into this country and looked at the coverage on Monday night, they would never have thought that the PNM was contesting in Diego Martin, in Port of Spain, in Arima, in Tunapuna, Piaco, or Point 14, because there was virtually no coverage of those areas where the PNM won. Because it didn't suit the conversation to show that the PNM had won handsomely in these areas. And the entire misinformation drag was in the areas where they felt that people could have claimed victory. And here it is, 84 seats out of 137, or 82 seats out of 137. It is, there are 137 seats. One we won before election day. Okay? So we won 82 seats, they won 55 seats. But somehow, 55 seats won the election. That's what was going on. Absolute nonsense. And all of that was a manipulation so that the person who was leading the opposing party would not be seen to have yet again lost an election. That's what was happening on Monday night. And misinformation had to be put out there to get that point of view across to the public. We are not foolish, you know. We run a political party. We know what is happening in terms of trying to fashion and shape public opinion. That is what was happening there. But it can only go on until the EBC gives us the certified results. I am talking to you now about results that are uncertified, which we have from our collection in the field. And when we say we claim Sangre Grande, it was based on our satisfaction that we had won 4 seats and that we are still in control from the outcome of 2013, because the law says so. 4-4-4 was the result on Monday night. One newspaper published a map and shows that Sangre Grande is in yellow. You know, come on. I don't know if it's still being done. I think a lot of it was completed yesterday, as far as I know. It might, sometimes you get a second recount, I don't know. And that's why the EBC would take a little longer, because under law, it has to respond to certain things. So if after a recount, something is asked again, they'll do it over and so on. So we just have to wait on the EBC to complete the process, which is covered by the law, anxious as we may be for the final outcome.
But on that score, I recall that in 2013, when there was the 444 in Chaguanas, there was a 444 two-way tie.
444?
Yes, it was 3-3-2, but on the basis of the allocation of all the men, it became 4-4-4. Because the ILP had gotten more votes collectively than the other two
The
parties.
ILP got 2 aldermen.
Right.
Good.
The PNM got 1 and the
So it became
got
2
1.
plus 2 and became 3 plus 1, 3 plus 1.
Right.
Yep.
So 4-4-4. And at the time, the idea was floated of using the incumbent chairman, who was then Orlando Lamasan, to control the corporation, with UNC to control the corporation.
Well, it's not.
It didn't find favor with
No.
the PNM at that time.
It is, no. It is not an idea being floated. It is the law. What amazes me in Trinidad and Tobago is how people who seek to speak to the public do not sufficiently inform themselves before they mount the podium to speak. The law says that after an election, and it applies to Chaguanas as it's to Sangre Grande, the law says after an election, the incumbent chairman remains in office until another chairman is elected. So whatever is being said by who want to claim or who want to claim, that can't supersede the law. So now you go now to elect somebody. In the case of Chaguanas, the UNC chairman was there, but there was more votes which was not UNC votes. So he couldn't automatically have remained there by law because the UNC was in the minority. You would have heard me say that the ILP came to the PNM and said, let us coalesce and the PNM will have the chairmanship, and the PNM and the ILP would have made the UNC not be able to hold the chairmanship after the vote for a chairman. And that would have removed the chairman who was remaining in office until a new chairman is elected. We chose not to do that. And on that basis, when you went to elect a chairman, the PNM didn't have enough PNM votes to elect a chairman, so we automatically chose to go in the opposition. The ILP and the UNC were now in contention for the chairmanship, and you know what happened there. Someone crossed the floor, and there was a chairman elected. That was what happened. But the law remained there that whoever was in post would have remained there until a chairman was elected. And in the case of Sangre Grande, in a 6-6 situation, 4 seats and 2 aldermen each, 6-6, the chairman remains when it comes up for a chairman to be elected, right? And a person will go in the seat and the votes will be cast. I expect 6-6 because the PNM votes, the 6 PNM votes will be cast for a PNM nominee. And of course, if the UNC wants to vote for us, I mean, that's up to them. But the bottom line is the PNM 6 votes will be cast. We expect that if another 6 votes is cast against, then the chairman cannot be replaced. And the law says the chairman remains in place until a new chairman is elected. And in terms of conducting corporation business after that, the chairman has a casting vote. So in effect, the PNM in conducting Sangre Grande business, the PNM has 7 votes, the UNC has 6 votes, and the last time I was in school, 7 is more than 6.
Mr. Prime Minister, backtracking a little bit here now, you said that the media disseminated wrong information on election night. You've also put in question the role of the media on several occasions. Do you have confidence in the media?
No, I question the role of the media in accepting information that our view from Bali's House, and I'm taking liberties here, is that the misinformation was being fed for a purpose and it was being accepted without question. And I give you an example. You published the opposition leader saying that her party wrested 12 seats from the PNM. If I ask you now, where were those 12 seats by the PNM lost to the UNC? And that brings to question the veracity of statements made by the opposition leader. And you must remember, those statements were made in a very controlled and deliberate way. It wasn't even being made by information coming in and changing it. It was a prepared, controlled statement that was made to the media by the opposition leader about wresting 12 seats from the PNM. And I'm sure there are many people in this country who heard that and verily believed it. It is not true. And that the PNM lost 70,000 votes. It's just not true. And it's because I have confidence in the media why I raised this, because I would like to know when I read the papers or when I hear something that there's a very good chance that it is true. And when persons want to feed misinformation, they should be challenged. Feel free to challenge the PNM, Feel free to challenge the PNM. But don't give other people a free right to feed misinformation.
Mr. Prime Minister, you have been championing the cause for local government reform. And clearly now that the local government elections are over, you have some time in front of you to be able to table bills and what have you towards that end. Can you put any timelines on when in fact some things will happen so that you can?
Well, during the campaign, we did say that the Attorney General's office has been working on codifying the outcome of the consultations, and we have a parliamentary schedule. I wouldn't want to speak for the Attorney General at this point, but we want to do that. In the early half of 2017, we should see that legislation coming out. But what we expect is going to happen is that once the legislation is available, there will be further consultations in and out of the parliament on it, and then it becomes subject to parliamentary action. But we do have some other things in the queue, one of which is the Tobago legislation on the THA, and that is also in the queue. We have the Tobago land legislation, we have the FACTA legislation, so there are some things in the queue. But what is certainly in the work program is bringing to Parliament the legislative outturn of our exercise going forward in local government.
Just want to go back to Matlot. There was a resident, that I saw on television last night complaining that he'd lost, his entire garden stock. and that he was the breadwinner, sole breadwinner in the context of, his family, and his daughter being a student at St. George's University in Grenada. There are going to be people like these who perhaps would need monetary assistance, more than anything else. Government prepared to, reach out to that kind of...
I wouldn't want to comment at this time on the specific instance, but I do know that the general approach of the nation to our citizens is that we are our brother's keepers. And insofar as there are opportunities for us to assist, I'm sure that the state will assist in some way. But of course, expectations and requirements are two different things. But we will, there are disasters taking place. Some persons have lost more than others, and it will fall to the state and its agencies to see to what extent we can assist.
Maybe this last question of mine may have been answered, but still I put it out. The PNM government certainly can expect tides of discontent, running through your administration. To it, you may have people who are disgruntled workers, contractors, schoolgoers, waterless communities, victims of...
What are you reading from there?
No, this is a question that I just penned.
I thought it was a published script.
No, at all not. I penned some of my thoughts so that I can get it out to you all. Okay? Yes.
Carry on.
You gonna have these.
I understand. I understand. Yeah, I mean, I'm not accusing you of any malice, right? Indeed. You just want to be thorough. Yeah. You're listing the whole plethora of discontent.
Yeah. Yes. And it's been rising. Clearly, it would not have escaped you all. And some people feel perhaps that you are not, let's say, accommodating enough in terms of responses to such situations. Can you wipe that away? Or?
No, we can't wipe it away. The route to the list of discontent that you mentioned there, we have to understand that the country is going through a difficult period. And the government's ability to respond in the way that might be required or that some person might expect, the government's inability to respond is very real. I want to say again, it would be a mistake for any person in this country to believe that what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago is business as usual. We've said it over and over. The government has a responsibility, particularly to those persons who are least able to look after themselves. But in so doing, that responsibility will be circumscribed by an ability to do certain things. And one of the things the government is not able to do now is to spend as much money as it was able to when money was more easily available. And I just want the population to understand that. And while the government is managing this by ensuring that we do the best with the reduced circumstances, that same approach has to go down towards the level of the individual. But of course, we don't want to shrink our economy down to the size of a marble. We want to have a buoyant economy. So while we're saying, be careful what you do, be careful how you organize your private life, we're also saying to you, participate in the economy so we can have economic growth, which means that you will spend, goods will be bought, people will be employed, and so on. So it's a balancing act on both sides. The government's role and the individual role, they're both there to be discharged by the government and the individual or the agencies. So we are all in this together. And if there's discontent because things have changed, the one thing that the government must work over time to ensure is that that changed circumstance is governed by fairness, so that some people don't bear more of the brunt of the change than others, and that some don't prosper at the expense of others. So that is the government's major role, that as we face our challenges as a nation, that there's fairness in the management of the country's affairs.
Mr. Rowley, going back just a little bit here, right? Just for clarification purposes, can you tell me what law allows for a corporation chairman to stay in place or have a casting vote? Just for clarification purposes.
I'm not a lawyer, but I'm so advised. There's a lawyer. I brought a lawyer to answer that.
I start with the Municipal Corporations Act, which states very, very clearly that an incumbent chairman or mayor stays in office until there has been an election and an acceptance of an election and an oath administered for a new chairman, and you'll then move to other subsidiary pieces of legislation that reinforce that position and set out clearly the process under which you'll elect a new chairman or mayor.
Prime Minister, I just want to go back to the legislative queue that you mentioned. 2 points. In need legislation to do that? You
It all depends on it all depends on which mouth of the opposition you're quoting, because they had two positions. One is that we don't need legislation, and the other was that our offerings were so far-reaching that they require an amendment to the Constitution. So those were two positions that came from the opposition. Hopefully by the time we get to the Parliament, they would have coalesced into something that they all agree on, and that as we as parliamentarians all receive the legislation, we will be able to proceed with a bit more clarity for them.
And I also wanted to ask about FACA because of Christmas, then THA elections, then Carnival, and I know February was the last given deadline for that to be resolved. Have you all made any headway on getting the opposition to the table to agree on?
Well, the FATCA matter comes up in the Parliament again in I think on the 16th, next week Friday. So that comes back in before. By that time, we would have dealt with the THA election order and tomorrow's Private Members' Day. So we go back to FACTA and we'll take it at that time. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much for coming.